Hey folks, this is Cindy. Thanks so much for stopping by. I am back with another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at Faux Dimension. Now, I just added my dimension with Copic Markers. Basically, it's the equivalent of a drop shadow. However, I really think that when you add this to a card, it could really make or break it. So I'm going to be using some of the Hero Arts My Monthly Hero Kit for January 2018, as well as an add-on stamp set for this kit. I really adore this kit this month, folks. It is so sweet, so darling. There was so much to it that I almost ordered everything I could get my hands on because I really, really enjoy it. Okay, so let's take a look at what I'm going to be using. This is the paper layering floral heart with frame. This was an add-on to the My Monthly Hero, and this die is just crazy beautiful. I have seen so many samples with it, and I strongly look forward to using it in the future. Now, this does have two pieces. It comes connected, but I did snip those apart because I'm just going to use that outer heart for my card today. This is the Color Layering of Rose stamp set. This was also an add-on for the My Monthly Hero kit, and I normally, when I get stamp sets like this, the first thing I do is to find the outline images and color those in. Today I wanted to do a little bit something different, so I do look forward to using this again in the future, but it is gorgeous for stamp layering as well if you enjoy that kind of thing. This was from the Hero Arts My Monthly Hero Kit of January 2016. Yes, 2016. So it's a couple years old, but I've hung on to this because look at all of these stamps that came in the kit. They're just wonderful for Valentine's Day or just a general love card as well. This is the Hero Arts wood grain background stamp. Ignore that. I didn't use it today, but I thought I was gonna, and it's a great stamp to use anyway. So these are the papers that came in the kit this month, and I'm not going to use them. I normally covet the Hero Arts papers that come with the kits. But I did take a great amount of inspiration from the colors in this kit. There's also some ink cubes that came with it. I don't show you in the video here, but they match these papers really well. I just think that they're so lovely, and I really wanted to play up those colors. Okay, so I have some Neenah Solar White cardstock. I have it cut down to 5 by 5 inches, and I'm going to take the die from the paper layering floral heart, and I'm going to place it here just on the center of my card panel if it will quit sticking to the magnets. For some reason, these magnets really aren't that strong, but for some reason I couldn't keep it from sticking to the magnets. So once I get that under control, I place it on the center of my card panel, and I'm going to trace just the inside of it. At this point, I'm thinking I might do some masking, so I'm going to use the inside of the heart instead of the outside of the heart. I'm actually just kind of winging this card. Like, I kind of have a plan of what I'm going to do, but it's a very loose plan. I did do some playing around with a stamp set before I decided to make this card. I was playing around with different ink color combinations before I settled on these, and so I'm just kind of going with it, which is part of the reason why this is a longer video. Okay, so here is my first mistake, and there's a couple of those in this video. I should have, while I had that stamp on the panel before I picked it up with the door of my Misty, I should have actually erased those lines, those pencil lines, so I wouldn't have to do this. Now, I already have my stamp inked up with Hero Arts Bold Hybrid ink. This is in Rose Matter, and because I'm taking a minute to erase those lines, my ink is drying out. You do not want to stamp over pencil lines, folks. You will see it after the ink is on there, and that ink is actually going to seal in that pencil, and you won't be able to get it off. So don't do what I did. Make sure that you erase the lines first and then stamp. So because I had played around with the stamp set before I had made this card, I already had some masks made, and I used full stick post-it notes, and I stamped the rose on there, and then I pulled off 2 sheets and cut them both at the same time. So it's a really quick and easy way to get yourself some masks, and the stick actually last for a long time with full stick Post-it notes, so that's pretty handy. All right, so now that I have both of my roses stamped on there, which by the way, I double stamped both of those, I'm bringing in Hero Art's Red Royal ink, and I have the second layer in the color, in the rose stamp set. And I'm going to stamp those on there. I did cut out me lining them up because my head was in the way, but these roses are actually really easy to line up. I did triple stamp these. Now, at this point, I've decided I'm going to do some heat embossing. So I just have the one stamp, or the one second layer done on the first rose. And I know that that ink is still kind of damp, so I'm going to take advantage of that. I've prepped my panel with an Inkcase Success powder tool to get rid of the static, and I'm putting on Hero Art's clear embossing powder. This is just directly over that Red Royal ink because it's still damp. And then I'm going to heat set this. I am going to try to minimize as much heat setting on this card panel as I can. Keep in mind, folks, the more that you heat set your cardstock, the more likely it is to warp, and I'm going to try to minimize that as much as I can. Now, I didn't get, it wasn't as glossy as I wanted it to be, so now I'm coming in with the Hero Arts, the Versamark clear embossing ink, and I'm going right over the top of that embossing that I had just done. And again, I'm bringing in the Hero Arts clear embossing powder, and then I'll heat set this. Now, at this point, I have 2 layers of embossing on both of those roses. I did the same for both of them, and it gives it lots of dimension. It's nice and raised and nice and glossy. It looks really pretty. Plus, it makes that Red Royal look super vibrant. Now I'm bringing in the first layer of both of the leaves, and here is my second mistake. That leaf that is down there on the bottom, I didn't erase the pencil line. And when the card is finished, you can see it a little bit. Now, you won't see it in the video, but you can in real life. It's a bummer. Make sure, again, you erase those pencil lines before you do anything else. Now I'm going to place those masks back on there so I don't stamp over the top of my roses now that those are done. And at this point, this is where I decide that I'm going to use the colors that are in that paper. And instead of green leaves, I have Hero Art's Soft Granite ink, and I'm going to stamp these in gray. If I were to do this again, I would do these leaves in charcoal. This does dry back quite a bit, and soft granite is actually, it's a really nice, light, soft gray in real life. And I kind of wish that I had done something a little bit bolder and stronger, but that's fine. This still turned out. And then also, I triple stamp these, so I go over it 3 times each, and then I also added a third leaf on there. Now I'm going to do the second layer of these leaves, and this is where I bring in Versamark ink because I'm going to do some more embossing on these. And I decided, since those papers had some gold accents in them, that I would do some gold heat embossing on those leaves to kind of play up the gold that is in the paper. And because I have already done some heat embossing previously, I am making sure that I have loads of anti-static powder on my card panel. I don't want the gold embossing powder to stick any place that I don't want it, especially on top of those roses. And also, I'm kind of thinking I'm still going to do some masking and ink blending on this card panel, so I'm trying to be extra careful about that. So I stamp all 3 of those with the second layer, and then I emboss them with Hero Art's gold embossing powder. And I didn't do a second layer on these, although you could. I think that a second layer of embossing powder on them would be really fabulous. And then I decided that I needed to make some masks, and I left this in the video because I didn't show you with the roses, so I thought it'd be a good idea to show you how I do this with the leaves. It's the same exact thing. So I've inked it up. I just had the charcoal ink sitting here on my work surface, so I just grabbed that. I'm stamping those. And then this is 2 layers of full stick Post-it notes. So I just need to cut out the one, and it's going to give me 2 of each. I also have my sentiment placed there on my panel because I am going to be adding some more leaves here in a moment, and I wanted to make sure that none of those leaves were going to be directly underneath my sentiment. You could. I don't think it's probably that big of a deal, but at this point I don't know what direction I'm going to go with to finish this panel. So I'm just trying to be really careful because I definitely do not want to have to start this over. And I'm placing these masks over the top of my leaves, and then I also put the masks back over the top of my roses. And I had seen this somewhere where you just take the second layer or an outline image and you just stamp that directly onto your card panel, especially in florals. I see this a lot in florals. It might have been on Pinterest, but I really love the way that this looks. I've done this on a couple of my cards, and I just think that it adds a little bit more detail to it, and it's fabulous. You could skip this if you wanted to and just walk away from this panel as it is, mount it on a card base and call it a day. But I think that, again, I think that this just adds a little bit more detail and a little bit of character to it. So my stamp here is getting a little worn out and it's kind of dirty, so it doesn't want to stick to the Misty. So once I get that picked up on my Misty door, I thought about using the soft granite ink again because I had already had those leaves done in soft granite, but I decided to go with the charcoal ink because those flowers are so dark. They're really bold. They stand out on the card panel quite a bit. So I wanted to kind of balance that out a little bit and go with a little bit darker leaf so everything looks a little bit more cohesive. And I do double stamp these. I don't show that in the video, but I wanted to make sure that they were going to be nice and solid, nice and dark, so when they dry back, they still stand out really well. At this point, I've decided that I'm not going to do any ink blending or masking. So I have my sentiment back on my card panel, and I'm going to heat emboss this in gold, the Hero Arts gold embossing powder. Again, I'm going in there with my anti-static powder tool, and I'm making sure I put on a ton. I think it's kind of hard to see in the video, but I took some bristles out of the center of my powder tool, so when I actually put it down on my card panel, there's a lot that comes out. And I really like that because then I make sure that I don't get anything where I don't want it. So I'd also like to note that when I know that I'm going to be doing a lot of heat embossing, I will turn on my heat tool and I'll just let it run. Now, mine is in a safe place, so I would definitely make sure that yours is in a safe place if you're going to do that. But I think it helps a bunch when heat embossing, and it certainly reduces the warping. Now, I just took a Copic multi-liner pen. This is in a gray, and I traced out the heart. It was just a spare heart that I had cut out of a piece of cardstock. You could leave that off there. If you just wanted to erase that pencil line and leave the panel as it is, you totally could. You certainly wouldn't have to add anything extra to it. I totally think that this panel could stand up on its own without any of that, but I don't know when to quit, and I love to add a faux dimension or a drop shadow to my cards. So I always take the opportunity to do a faux frame and add that in there because I think it just really kicks it up a notch. So that's what I'm doing now, is I'm adding in a drop shadow, and this really makes things pop. Makes it looks like it has a lot of dimension, although at this point it's still one layer. So I started with my C5, which is my darkest. Normally I would start with my second lightest, work to my darkest, and then work back out to my lightest. But these roses are bold enough that I really felt that I could go pretty dark with this drop shadow and be all right. So I started with the C5, blended that out with the C3, then with the C1. Now I have a C00. And then I'm going to work out some of those harsher lines with my colorless blender. And then I got a little too excited, so I did end up having to go back in and add a little bit more with the C1. I probably could have done a C3 or back to the C5 again and just kind of touched it up here or here and there in the corners, and it probably would have been fine. So here's where I decide that I'm going to add the drop shadow to that heart. I want to make it look like it's popping off the page. And my light source is going from the top right. So I'm just adding it there on the bottom right, and then just on the inside of the right hand side of that where the heart bows, and then a little bit around the leaf. And here's the trick. I'm making my lines thicker and wider the further down it goes. As I start to go up along the right hand side of the heart and just the top of that curve at the top of the heart, I make sure that I'm just using the tip of my marker and thinning that out quite a bit. And then I'm using the same colors. It's the same approach as I did when I did the drop shadow on the outside of those flowers and the leaves. And then I decided that I wanted to add a little bit more dimension yet. So I'm taking that drop shadow to the inside of the roses, everything that's sitting on top of the heart, and adding it there too. So now I have 3 little hearts. This is from the Lovebirds stamp set. This is actually a Stampin' Cut, so it comes with coordinating dies, and it is darling. This is definitely on my to-do list. It was an add-on. Now I did cut out some of that because my head was in the way, and I just showed you where I stamped the last little trio there. So now I have some Neenah Solar White cardstock. This is cut up to 5 inches by 10 inches, and then I have it scored at 5 inches. And I've trimmed down this panel to 4.5 by 4.5. And I was thinking about just leaving that white so it would be white on white. But I decided that I really wanted to add a little bit more color to it, kind of balance out all of that pink and red a little bit more. So I have another 5 by 5 inch panel, and I'm going direct to paper with the Rose Madder ink. And I do make sure that I heat set this before I add it to my card base. You probably don't have to. I just find that I have better luck with my adhesives when I do that. I did mount it to my card base. You could certainly trim that down a little bit so it just kind of frames your card panel if you'd like, but I left it whole. And I also have some fun foam with some double-sided adhesive on the back because I did have a little bit of warping on that panel, and that fun foam definitely helps straighten that out. And I'm so sorry that you can see the back of my head. I thought I cut that out, but apparently I did not. All right, so here is mistake number 2. This is a Spectrum Noir glitter pen, and I don't remember which color off the top of my head. I'll link that down below as well as over on my blog. But there was too much in the brush when I put it on my card panel, and it started to go everywhere. So here's what I'm going to do. I finished coloring all of those in, and now, so I could wait for it to dry. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a white gel pen, and I'm just going to go over the top of that. I let it dry. I take a sand eraser very lightly over the top, and then I do it again, and then the sand eraser again, and that smooths it out pretty well. You can still kind of tell that there's a little bit of a boo-boo there, but it's nothing major. It'll be fine. Now, this is some lacquer, and this is from Hero Arts, and I don't remember off the top of my head which kit this came in. It was a couple months ago. I did see some of this at Creativation. I'm pretty sure you can find it on their website. If you can't, it should be there soon. I will have that link down below if it's available and over on my blog. Otherwise, I will keep you posted. And I just went over the top of those flowers. I also went over those leaves earlier, and I didn't mention this, with some Nouveau glitter, just to make those stand out a little bit, although they certainly wasn't needed. It would have been fine without it, but I do love me some glitter. Okay, so I do think that this kit is still available over at Hero Arts, and I will have this link down below. I strongly suggest you check it out, folks. It is darling, and these add-ons this month are just fab. So we are done. We are good to go. I hope you enjoyed my card today. If you did, hit that like button and share it with your friends. Also, be sure to subscribe to my channel if you have not already, and tap that bell next to the subscribe button so you can receive all future notifications. Thanks again so much for stopping by. Until next time.